Paul Skenes will start for the Pittsburgh Pirates against the Chicago Cubs tonight. But is he still the front runner for the Rookie of the Year award? We're going to discuss on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast, bringing you your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. Today's episode, which will be mentioned later, is brought to you by FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com right now and take part in all of the promotions that FanDuel has to offer as football season is here. Baseball season is approaching the playoffs. I mean, you have everything going on FanDuel right now. Pittsburgh Pirates won 5-3 yesterday over the Chicago Cubs. We'll talk about that more later on the show today. It is another Paul Skenes day. This time again in Wrigley Field. We all remember what happened the last time that Paul Skenes arrived at Wrigley Field and what he was able to do. And he was very phenomenal when he was in Wrigley Field the last time. And at that point, when he started in Wrigley Field the last time, he was definitely the front runner for Rookie of the Year. I don't think a lot of people were really even arguing it really at all at that point about where Paul Skenes was as far as the Rookie of the Year award. He was doing historical things. Upon his arrival in May, he was just absolutely mowing teams down, including the Chicago Cubs, who he'll pitch against again tonight. And throughout his season, you've seen him take a step back just a little bit. Not a crazy step back, but just a minor step back. And that's something, that when you hear the word step back, you're thinking, oh, that's probably bad. Well, not at all. I mean, he's still having a very, very good season for all intents and purposes. Paul Skenes, in his 18 starts so far this year in 109 innings, still has a 2.23 ERA with a .95 whip and 136 strikeouts. Strikeout number is high, obviously, for what I'm about to say, but those are almost closer-like numbers from a starting pitcher who has done a phenomenal job for what he's been able to do this season. And you continue to see what Paul Skenes does, and you continue to watch what he does. And he's one of those guys in sports, those guys in sports that when they're on, you have to watch them. And Paul Skenes is one of those guys, not only for Pirates fans, but for a lot of fans in the sport of baseball. Paul Skenes is that kind of guy that has to start a lot. And you want to watch him pitch every time he goes out there because of how tantalizing he is. He is just an enigma. He's something that Pittsburgh has never seen, arguably something that baseball has never seen. And albeit he may not be the front runner now for the NL Rookie of the Year award, but he still has a pretty good shot. And September is going to be a large part in why I think he could. Because if he does pitch the rest of the season, which it appears that's what the Pirates want to do, they do not have plans to shut him down as we know right now and as I'm recording this. Yes, they're limiting him a little bit. You're starting to see him only go about 5, maybe 6 innings in most of his starts now. But that's their due diligence to make sure that his arm is okay. Because if you heard my conversation with Gary yesterday, nobody really knows how these arms are going to react. Nobody really knows how all of this is going to work. We don't know if Paul Skenes is going to have fatigue going into the offseason or if he's just fine. But the Pirates are appearing to be doing exactly what they need to do as far as all this is concerned. Now, when we're talking about the NL Rookie of the Year award, if you remember a couple weeks ago in the midst of that 10-game losing streak, actually pretty much right in the middle of it, we had Javier Reyes on the show from Locked On Padres, and we discussed this about really the two guys that are going to be the front runners here, and that's Jackson Merrill and Paul Skenes. Jackson Merrill in his own right, all-star as well. Jackson Merrill has had a phenomenal rookie season, 481 at-bats, a 291. So I will repeat what I just said. Jackson Merrill has had a phenomenal season. I mean, you're looking at 481 at-bats, a .291 average, 21 home runs, 79 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, and an .816 OPS for a guy in Jackson Merrill, who in his own right was also an all-star this year and has helped that San Diego Padres team be pretty much the kind of team that they are now, where they're going to be a very tough cookie when it comes to October to get out of the playoffs. And that's even including teams like the LA Dodgers and teams like the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think the Padres have a very good advantage, and Jackson Merrill has been a large part of that. And when you actually go to FanDuel right now, we'll talk about this again in the ad read later, but FanDuel right now has Jackson Merrill as the considerable leader for Rookie of the Year at minus 950. So he is the considerable favorite now to win this award. Paul Skenes in second at plus 750, Jackson Chourio at plus 1300. So that's pretty much where it all boils down, is those three players. Shoto Imanaga, Mason Wynn, Tyler Fitzgerald also round that out. Those guys have clearly not done enough to really warrant be in the conversation to win this award. Now, there's two frames of thought to this when you're discussing the NL Rookie of the Year award and the voting for it and all of that stuff, because at the end of the day, you are going to have some voters that are going to give the edge to a guy like Jackson Merrill purely because, one, he's played all season, two, he's been a guy that has been consistent all season, and he plays just about every day. Obviously, Paul Skenes as a starting pitcher is not going to play every day. But there's also still a case to make that Paul Skenes has been very valuable to his team, as has Jackson Merrill. But Paul Skenes also did something that's only been done 4 times, starting as a rookie in the All-Star game. Now, since then, things have been a little different for Paul Skenes. I mean, you can take a look at what he's done in the second half, and it hasn't been really what we were seeing earlier in the year. I mean, in his last 7 starts, he has a 2.74 ERA. I mean, you hear that from anybody else, you're going to be like, oh, that's no problem. Post All-Star, that's his ERA. Pre-All-Star, 1.90. So he's taken a dip a little bit. And I think that him winning Rookie of the Year is a lot more difficult than it would have been saying this in July. You know, I think it's a lot harder now on September 3rd to say that Paul Skenes can win this award. Now, will he get votes for it? Of course he will. He'll obviously get votes for it. And I think, again, he should probably win the award. But it's just a matter of, how does Jackson Merrill play the rest of the month? How does Paul Skenes, starting tonight, play the rest of the month? And does he do something historic enough to kind of take an advantage again? Does he have another no-hit outing in him? Does he have one of those double-digit strikeout outings in him again? I think those are the questions that you start asking yourself because, yes, Jackson Merrill has been absolutely phenomenal, but Paul Skenes has been historic. And they're both leaders in hitting and pitching as far as rookies are concerned. So you're really at this point just making the argument that, are you going to vote for the position player that has played all season and has been consistent all season, or are you going to bet on the starting pitcher who started about a month and a half later, but has also been on a historic rookie run? That's really, I think, the conversation is here, and I think that's where it's going to boil down to. Obviously, I'm going to be rooting for Paul Skenes to win this award because, well, duh. And I'm sure me and Javi, when the season comes around and they start passing out these awards, I think this is a conversation that could be completely different by the end of the season. Because remind yourself, the playoffs do not come into account with these awards. These are regular season awards. So the playoffs don't matter. So keep that in mind too. And if Paul Skenes could find a way to win it, folks, as you heard earlier, you can get it at pretty good money if you're into that kind of thing. And I think it's going to be fascinating to watch because the Pirates have not had really a thought about a guy winning a Rookie of the Year award in quite some time. And not only that, you're watching a guy in Paul Skenes, as I mentioned earlier, that has just done phenomenal things this year, will continue to do phenomenal things throughout his career, and is must-watch television. So we will watch him tonight against the Chicago Cubs as the Pirates look to win the series. against the Chicago Cubs. And we're going to discuss their win last night, talking about Jared Jones and, well, something to say good about the bullpen for once. We're going to discuss that as well here on the Locked On Pirates podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase, because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You can even get super deals for upcoming events like the Pirates' long homestand that they're going to have, and it's going to be the longest one they have left. So if you still want to go to PNC Park, make sure you look for those super deals, because Game Time Picks curates and makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. If you toggle all-in pricing, you'll get to see your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout, and the Game Time ticket coverage allows your purchase to be covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off, and download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every day. After making Locked On Pirates your first listen of the day, as you always do, make Locked On MLB your second listen of the day with Paul Francis Sullivan, as he covers everything going on with baseball in the month of September as October approaches. You can find that where you found this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms. Make sure you also check out the Locked On Steelers podcast with Christopher Carter. He'll be covering everything you need to know about Steelers Falcons this Sunday. Hunter Hodes has all of your postseason or off-season coverage about the Penguins as they arrive back starting next month. So sports are about to be back in full swing, folks, but baseball is still going, and the Pittsburgh Pirates are still going. Now, August obviously was a month to forget for the Pittsburgh Pirates. It was a month that effectively took them out of any idea that they could be a postseason team this year. And you kind of just hope that September is a month for them that goes well. And that Guardian series, they lose that series, but they did get an impressive victory on Saturday. I had somebody in the comments the other day say that that might be the best that this team has looked in a long time, and I completely agree. I mean, the starting pitching was great. The relief was great. And that's kind of what you saw last night with Jared Jones and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Jared Jones, of course, allowed 3 earned runs over 6 1/3 innings pitched in the game last night. But he spoke to Andrew Destin of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and said that was the best that he's felt realistically since even before the injury. We all remember the right lat strain that sidelined him for over 2 months and kind of put a damper on the season for the Pittsburgh Pirates, as you kind of saw guys like Jake Woodford and Domingo Germán have to get starts, and even the pesky bullpen game at times because of the injury to Jared Jones, who was having a phenomenal season beforehand, was slowing down a little bit before the injury, which kind of stung, and took up a lot of attention in spring. I mean, Jared Jones definitely did something you don't see very often, where he just flat out made the roster out of spring training, and that was very nice to see for the youngster. And you really like what you have to see from a guy like that, because he really only made one bad pitch all night. I mean, Dansby Swanson took him yard, and that was pretty much the only pitch that he had that was bad, and he kept the Pirates in the game. And that's kind of what you wanted to see from a guy like Jared Jones, who you're hoping has a strong ending to the campaign, because there's no doubt that Jared Jones is a future piece of this rotation. He's one of the future pieces of this team overall and what their success could be moving forward. And it's not at all hard to say that, because, I mean, Jared Jones, before even Paul Skenes arrived, was the talk of this Pittsburgh Pirates team with how good he was with that fastball and slider combination. The slider especially was very, very good. And he threw 87 pitches last night, and that was the highest he's thrown since June 22nd against the Tampa Bay Rays. And 80 pitches after 6 innings you'll take that in today's age. You absolutely will. And that's something that you like to see. And Derek Shelton had a lot to say about him as well. If he wouldn't have been that efficient, probably not. But the fact that he was that efficient and was in a pretty good spot, we decided to keep him in. So that's what you like to see, is let your guys go when they're being efficient, when they're having a good outing. And again, Ian Happ had the 2 RBIs. Dansby Swanson had the 1 RBI on the homer. But I think what was even more impressive that we saw from yesterday's game as well was the fact that the bullpen finally, much like they did Saturday, held on to a lead that the Pirates got late, which we'll discuss later, talking about Andrew McCutchen. But the Pirates got the lead late after scoring 4 runs in the 8th. And much like all of you, I was sitting there thinking, okay, how is this going to derail itself this time? How is it going to go this time with how the bullpen is going to give up runs? And it just didn't happen. I mean, Jalen Beeks came in. He was credited with the win, got the final 2 outs in the 7th inning to make it stay where it was. Aroldis Chapman looks impressive with only 1 walk in his 22nd hold on the season. And then Dennis Santana, who I want to actually discuss a little bit, had a very phenomenal outing last night, gets his 3rd save of the year, and 3 up, 3 down. It just felt very easy for the bullpen last night. You like to see that. And Dennis Santana may not be the most household name from this Pirates bullpen. You have Chapman and Bednar and Holderman and Barucki and guys like that. But Dennis Santana, folks, has quietly had a very strong second half to the season. Over his last 15 games, he has a 2.04 ERA and 17 2/3 innings pitched with just 4 earned runs allowed in that time and a 0.62 whip. You want to take it to his last 30 games, he has a 3 ERA and 28 outings in 33 innings. And on top of that, he's been pretty good with the strikeouts. 18 strikeouts to just 2 walks in his last 15 games, 11 strikeouts to 0 walks in his last 7 games. And then you start looking at his splits, folks, in post-All-Star. Before the All-Star break, he was awful. 6.05 ERA, was not really showing much. Post-All-Star, he's appeared in 18 games in 21 2/3 innings and has a 1.66 ERA. Those are numbers, folks, that you like to see. Because on top of that, he has 25 strikeouts post-All-Star to just 2 walks. So Dennis Santana quietly has been one of the most impressive arms that the Pirates have had in the bullpen. And you'll see I'll have my 5 up, 5 down piece come out. And not to spoil it, but Dennis Santana and Jalen Beeks are both in the up category over at Steel City Pirates in that piece for good reason, because they've been guys that have come in and were able to just get outs. And that's been the problem with the Pirates. It's been one of their derailing problems so far, especially in the month of August. But you look at a guy in Jalen Beeks, even, who had a very good outing yesterday. He has a 0.87 ERA in his last 15 games and 10 1/3 innings pitched, 11 strikeouts to 6 walks. So albeit he's mainly just a lefty specialist at this point for Jalen Beeks, but he's able to go out there and get outs. And then you go back to Aroldis Chapman, who I've called for to be the closer for some time now amidst the struggles that David Bednar was having. Chapman has had a phenomenal year. 3.42 ERA in 58 outings, 84 strikeouts, of 2.4 ERA in his last 15 games. So maybe, just maybe, these are the guys you might want to use down the stretch. The guys that are getting you outs. They're making the game shorter, and albeit they're winning you games. The offense scored late, got the lead late. Tell me if that sounds familiar. But this time, much like Saturday against Cleveland, they were able to find a way to win the game and win it relatively clean. They didn't really struggle to get those outs. There was not really that moment of time where you were looking at them and saying, oh, here we go. Because guess what, folks? 3 scoreless innings from those guys. Well, two and 2/3. But That's what you want to see from this bullpen down the stretch. If the Pirates offense backs you up, which they have recently, win the game for them. Especially if you get a good outing from a guy like Jared Jones, and if you can get your bullpen just to get outs like they did last night, folks, I think you're going to like how the Pirates can potentially end this season. None of that would have mattered, though, if it were not for the efforts of Andrew McCutchen, who hit a home run in the 8th inning last night. That was the big propeller to this victory. We're going to discuss the offense that they had last night, take a look at it tonight, and also talk about Andrew McCutchen and what he means to this roster on the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I mentioned FanDuel earlier, but folks, get in here because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and we talk about them a lot, but we have something a little different for you. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. If you still want to ride with me about what we talked about earlier with Paul Skenes winning Rookie of the Year, folks, they're giving bonus bets out. They give out promotions all the time. Go bet on Paul Skenes because a $5 bet on Paul Skenes to win the National League Rookie of the Year would win you $37.50 to use however you'd like. So head over to FanDuel right now and visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook today. And welcome back, everybody, to the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every day. If you need to listen to Pirates games on the go, just head to the SiriusXM app and listen to the Pirates, because all you have to do is search Pirates and you'll be fine to find it. So, last night, again, big win for the Pirates, 5-3 over their NL Central rival Chicago Cubs, who've had a very strong second half after the All-Star break, now sitting at 71-67. The Pirates at 64-73. But the offense, it took a while. They couldn't find much help against Jameson Taillon. They couldn't really get after him at all. And it sucked because, I mean, it really just felt like a game that was going to be an autopilot game win for the Chicago Cubs again. But then came the 8th inning. The 8th inning comes, Brian Reynolds homers, makes it 3-3. Big 3-run homer from B-Ray, who has quietly still had a pretty good second half. He much like other All-Star on this team, Paul Skenes, has had a lesser second half, but it's still been a good one. And he was able to find a way to score Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and Nick Gonzalez with the home run. And then, of course, Andrew McCutchen launches one into left center field to give the Pirates the lead. Nick Gonzalez in the top of the 9th had a big 2-out hit to give the Pirates a 2-run advantage. But Andrew McCutchen's the one I want to speak on here specifically because Andrew McCutchen, folks, obviously just came off the IL. But Andrew McCutchen is a guy that you look at with this roster, and you look around this roster. And I've spoken about this a little bit about what this team is going to look like in 2025 and the fact that you're going to see a lot of familiar faces on this roster. You're going to see guys like Skenes, Keller, Jones, Ortiz, Gonzalez, IKF, Brian De La Cruz, O'Neal Cruz, Brian Reynolds. It's going to be a very similar team. And of the older veteran guys, Andrew McCutchen is the one that is most likely going to be back. And I think that his impact on this roster is very unique because he's not the same Andrew McCutchen that he once was. He's not 2013 MVP Andrew McCutchen anymore. Nobody's even suggesting that he is. But he brings a certain knack to this roster because, one, and I've said this on this show before, he is a guy that you look at and these young guys can look at and say, that guy right there has won here before. He's won an MVP award here before. He's been to the postseason 3 times in Pittsburgh, has won a wild card game in a one-game playoff before, and we're arguably one game from an NLCS in 2013. So he can mentor these young players like an O'Neal Cruz, who is making that move to center field. Let's not forget, Andrew McCutchen used to do that back in the day and used to be pretty good at it. So I think he's a good mentor to have for an O'Neal Cruz. But not only that, he's just a good guy to have around. He's going to teach these guys things. I've always said I think he has a future in coaching after he retires. But I do think that he just has a special knack with these players. And not only as a mentor, but just as a clubhouse guy. Like a moment like last night, if the Pirates lose that game, that's just, another one in the loss column and the season's derailing, which it has. But Andrew McCutchen launches one over the left field wall, and that's a big win. And any win you get in Wrigley Field is a big one. And especially in close games, which have been the Pirates' problem as of late, that's what you want to see. Is you want to see your veterans like Andrew McCutchen pick this team up when they need it. And that is exactly what he did last night. And what you hope he can do again is it'll be Paul Skenes versus Kyle Hendricks tonight. If you guys remember the last time the Pirates faced Kyle Hendricks, it wasn't all that long ago. It was literally last week in that series that was absolutely horrid. But he only went 1 2/3 innings in that outing with 6 earned runs, 8 hits allowed, 3 walks, and 2 strikeouts in that crazy game that the Pirates lost, which was pretty much every single game in that series. And Paul Skenes, again, will look to have a very strong outing against the Chicago Cubs, a team that he has played well against. 5 innings pitched last week against them, 2 earned runs on 5 hits. He's had very good success against them. We remember opening day. We remember the no-hitter outing in May 17th. And we remember last week, he still looked pretty good. So this is a team that is familiar with Paul Skenes. This is a team that Paul Skenes has faced quite a bit already. This is a team that Paul Skenes is familiar with too. So we'll see how he does. We'll see if the offense can pick up some good starting pitching, hopefully again tonight, as the Pittsburgh Pirates look to win the series against the Chicago Cubs. My name is Ethan Smith. Follow me right there on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. You can find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms because it is free and available to you every Monday through Friday. Folks, have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow. But until then, see you on the flip side.